Good evening, everyone. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us for this final plenary session of ICTC 2026. I'm Sarah. I'm the program manager for the Conservation Tech team at the Nature Conservancy. To close the day, we're going to hear from a few final speakers speaking about the future of conservation technology and where we go from here. So first, please join me in welcoming to the stage Jes Lefcourt, Director, EarthRanger at the Allen Institute for AI.
Hi, everyone. So, to me, the downside of this event being so beautifully produced is that it's really kind of intimidating being on a stage like this. It feels like being at the CES or some major event, which is just not my style. So I gotta take the formality down a little bit. I apologize. But to start, by show of hands, how many people have been told at some point by an engineer, a software developer, or hardware engineer that it works on my machine or it works in my lab, so don't worry about it? Yeah. All right, I actually told this to Corinne earlier today as well. I realized as I was saying it, hey, that's coming up. But kind of similarly, I think that there's a similar sentiment in the conservation tech community around initial pilot technology, where, hey, we did this really, really awesome thing, and so therefore we, saved all the animals, or we cured conservation issues. And unfortunately, I think that's just not the case. And so at the end of the day, just like it doesn't matter if it works on someone's machine or works in their lab, it doesn't matter if someone solves a problem in one reserve or for a local population of a species. It's a great thing to do, but ultimately, I think we're all here because we care about the larger outcomes. So how can we assist conservation more broadly? And I have to say this topic has been somewhat covered over the past couple of days already. I have a link here actually to Shah Selby's presentation because I think he did an absolutely brilliant job yesterday. And so I'm just going to stop talking after this and you can watch Shah. So I have some concepts in here, but he went into much deeper detail on a lot of these things, so I really do recommend this. Sarah Maston also did a really great job talking about scaling impact and products, so I refer you to them. So I saved my introduction for this point so I could leave that slide up a little bit. So as Sarah was so kindly to say, my name is Jes Lefcourt. I'm the director of the EarthRanger program at the Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence, or AI2. AI2 is a nonprofit that's focused on technology and AI, of course, for good. And EarthRanger is one of a number of programs that we have underneath that that's focused on conservation initiatives. Everything that we do is open. Everything we do at AI2 is open source, and everything that we do is free. We're very fortunate to be funded by the estate of Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft, which allows us to really show up and just serve the community however we can. So for a little bit of context, about 15 to 20 years ago, Paul Allen also funded the Great Elephant Census, which was an effort to count all of the savanna elephants in sub-Saharan Africa. And the outcome of that, of course, was that about a third of the elephants over that period had been killed. And so the team conducting the census and Paul Allen asked, what can we do to help? And so we worked with a lot of partners to understand a lot of their challenges. We slow-rolled a number of initial sites. The picture on the left here is of the Save the Elephants team with some members of the EarthRanger team, also our friend Ian Douglas Hamilton, who unfortunately passed a few months ago. And then the picture on the right is of Dennis, who's right there, working with some of our users to also understand their needs, validate that what we have built actually helps solve their problems, and then also provide training. What we came up with is this platform that integrates data from lots and lots of different data sources and shows them all in one place in an EarthRanger work presentation. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I just want to give a little bit of context. And so over the past 10 years, we have now grown to be in conservation terms, a fairly large conservation technology product. We are supporting over 900 sites in about 90 countries. We have more than 75,000 active users. Some other fun metrics, we are right now today tracking about 14,000 animals in real time, an additional 10,000 rangers. We have about 3.4 billion data points in total in the EarthRanger database. And so all of this is just to say we're really honored to be part of a program that's been around for a little bit and has found so many different ways to help. But with scale also comes great responsibility, to paraphrase a term for you comic book nerds. And the one that I want to talk about today is sustainability. So in 2018, on my second week on the job, we held our 4th annual user conference. And Steve Cunliffe, a good friend of ours, made the statement at that event that, I don't want to misquote him, if you're not in this for the long term, tell us now. If you go down the road and then decide to pull out, you would set back conservation efforts in Africa by at least 10 years. And I think there's probably a little bit of hyperbole in there, but the sentiment, I think, is still one that we really hold near and dear, which is that it's not just a matter of if we're not successful, that it didn't work. We're involving a lot of people, taking up a lot of resources, whether that's time or money or fuel or whatever that might be of people's time in order to develop and deploy these solutions. We're also having organizations shift their processes to leverage our technology. So it's absolutely critical that we take this really, really seriously and that we don't waste people's time. If we do that, then that's actually tantamount to harming conservation efforts. It's not just a matter of not being successful, it's actually doing harm. Building tech doesn't necessarily build impact. A good or even a great technical idea doesn't by itself translate to long-term value. So, and obviously technology is a field of really rapid development. So how do we ensure that what we do today is still useful 10 years from now? One framework we can use to think about this is the dichotomy of a product versus a project. So a project is a short-term initiative that's typically intended for one user, one organization, or one location. It's great at demonstrating an idea or proving out a technology. It's usually built quickly. It unapologetically uses duct tape whenever possible, which I think is wonderful. And it's also extremely alluring to users. It's great to have someone show up on your doorstep and say, I can solve that problem for you, no problem. It's going to take me three months and I'll have it up and running on a server. On the other hand, a product is something that's built for the long term. It takes into consideration what we call the ILITs, sustainability, survivability, dependability, supportability, all these sorts of things. I can't see it's obviously aimed at more broad scale use, and ultimately, in order to have a long-term impact, we have to make this transition from project to product. Both are obviously very important. Projects serve a really important purpose. It's how we prove out ideas. It's how we show that new technologies can be deployed. But if you're building a product and are presenting it as, if you're building a project and are presenting it as a product, you could actually be doing more harm than good, as I said earlier, as Steve Cunliffe pointed out. And so it's really important to be honest with yourselves and your users what your objectives are and what your long-term commitments are. So some considerations in building a product. First and foremost, it has to be user-driven, full stop, from the bottom to the top, across as broad a user base as you can in order to have as wide of an impact as you can while still keeping the product focused on the problem that you're trying to solve. It's really, really important that you spend as much time as conceivably possible with your users and with as many of your users as possible to have as much of a representation of that user group as you can. Observe, ask questions, understand their problem before you start building something. Unlike a project, which might be starting with the technology in order to prove a concept. In conservation, this is made particularly challenging by the fact that oftentimes our users are not the decision makers. They're not necessarily our customers. The people that make the decision to use your product are not necessarily the same people that are going to use it. And so you have to get to the user to truly understand if something is going to work and make a difference. A decision maker can partially represent them, but it's not the same thing. So that means you have to get to the users, obviously, to understand what they need. You have to convince the decision makers so that they decide to use it. You also have to convince the decision makers to let you work with the users so that you understand how things are actually going. We have to be humble. Conservation tech means building tools for conservationists. There is no such thing as a successful hero product in conservation. Everything that we do has to be in service of our users. I think that this is more true in this industry than in any other because of the very limited nature that this relatively small number of actual users. You can't make up for this difference through scale in a commercial setting. So be humble in the face of our users' incredible amount of experience and expertise. And you have to earn trust through long-term commitment, long-term consistency, and always delivering on your obligations and your promises. Beyond functionality, there's also a lot of other considerations in building a product that don't come into play with a project. So those include things like technical scalability. What works in one place for one user might not work for 10,000 or 100,000. You have to provide support and repair. In hardware, this is particularly hard, and I'm really thankful that we don't work in hardware ourselves. Hats off to those of you that do. But I think drones are a great example of this. Having spare parts on hand in really remote places for drones is really important. Being able to get them there is really important. Onboarding, can people find your product by themselves, or do they need help? Do they need help understanding how it fits into their mission and the way that they operate? Comms, how are people going to find out about your product so that it's going to be adopted broadly? Are there any legal considerations? Drones, again, another good example. Are there places where you can't fly drones? Education and capacity, are the people that are going to use your product, do they have the background to be successful at that? Do they have power? Do they have internet? And then what's really fun is there's always these surprises that no one anticipates. The one I heard just a couple days ago is that in Zambia, drone pilots are required to have pilot's licenses, which also means that they need annual physicals. And so if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to send a drone out to survey an area in Zambia, did you consider the cost and the time to send all of the pilots for physicals every year? Probably not. I wouldn't have. But for a sense of ratios, about 80% of EarthRanger's team works on product development. The other 20% is focused on these things. And we're really fortunate that none of the back office things, HR, legal, those fun things, are part of that 20% either. And so it's a non-trivial percentage of your overall investment. And of course, without a workable funding model, none of this is going to sustain either. I recognize that I'm coming from a place of extreme privilege in saying this. We're really, really fortunate to be funded the way that we are, but that also doesn't change the reality that this has to be considered. So I apologize for delivering this message, but I still think it's an important one to deliver. These are just a handful of possible funding models. Sarah Maston's presentation had a great list. I'll just say that I personally don't believe that direct sales or subscriptions are a viable financial model in a lot of conservation, maybe for a few products, but not for most. The market just isn't big enough. It's also really complicated in that funders, as I'm sure a lot of you have run into, funders like to fund projects, and they like to fund the development phase of a product, but no one wants to fund the support 3 years later. And so fundraising is also a really challenging model. I wish I had an answer for you here, but obviously it's just a critical thing to consider. Particularly because funding is so scarce in conservation, please, 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 whenever possible, don't reinvent the wheel. Innovation is critical. But in conservation, we have this enormous opportunity in that we're all trying to achieve the same outcome. It's not like a for-profit company which is driven by shareholder value, what they want to do is maximize the profit of that organization. We all want the same thing. And I hope that transcends the desire for the success of any individual organization or product. But that also means that we can innovate while also partnering if we recognize and are humble to the fact that other people have other ideas, can do things better. But let's work together to find those places where those can be done together instead of reinventing everything and replacing everything writ large. Partnerships are obviously extremely critical in all of this. It's the only way that you could possibly achieve all of these product considerations, because no organization in conservation is going to be big enough to take these things on themselves. I can't see the text; it's too small. I was officially old yesterday, by the way, and I can't see the monitor down there anymore. But in addition to just reducing expenses, it also just makes all of these things possible. You can't scale a product without having great partners on the ground that are going to help you make introductions and find opportunities, just for one example. One example of it that we're recently very excited about is our partnership with SMART. So EarthRanger and SMART is coming together to form the Smart EarthRanger Conservation Alliance, or SERCA. If you haven't heard about that, I just had to put a quick plug in for that. But we do want to take this much, much further. We invite all of you, please talk to us. We would love to work together on anything and everything, and I promise that we'll do our very best to do so without any sort of ego. We recognize that we're not the best at everything, or even most things. So maybe, I hope we are at some things. And so we would love to work with you all to innovate and find better solutions. So in closing, some calls to action. On the funder side, please don't just fund projects. And it's not enough if you're a funder to say, oh, well, we are now only going to fund things that has a sustainability plan. Because you need to recognize that you might be the sustainability plan. Right? Just saying that we're only going to work on things that have a long-term runway, I think is probably going to disqualify most great ideas and opportunities in conservation tech. Technologists, please be honest with your partners and your users and with yourselves about what your capabilities are long-term to sustain things, about whether or not you're building a project or a product. Again, it's great to build projects, but we have to look towards the long-term survivability. If you don't have a plan for these other considerations, go figure that out before moving forward, please. And if you can't figure that out, then there's probably something that needs to be adjusted in the plan. So go back to the drawing board and keep working on that. Practitioners, thank you for working with us on projects and discovering new things. But also, again, hold us accountable to that, hold us responsible to our commitments to you. If we are coming to you with a new technology, one of your absolute top considerations of whether or not you adopt that should be, is this going to be around 5 years from now? Do I need it to be? And if I do need it to be, is it going to be? I think I will leave you with that. So thank you so much to WildLabs for putting on this amazing event. Thank you to all the fellow technologists for joining us in building all these solutions. And first and foremost, as always, thank you to all of you that are working in conservation. We build these tools because we care about your missions, and so thank you for allowing us to be part of that journey.